And my name's Sean Marsh, for those who don't know me. Work for Chess in Schools and Communities. You can just about see that behind me if I go that way, Chess in Schools and Communities. And Chess in Schools and Communities, for those who don't know, has been going since 2009. And you may well have heard of the London Chess Classic Tournament, which very unfortunately can't be going ahead this year. That's organised by Chess in Schools and Communities. And we also do lots of work in schools all across the United Kingdom. And we have 300 regular schools into which we deliver our chess curriculum. And we have lots of other schools as well, known as supported schools, where we don't actually send a tutor to them, but we do send them equipment and workbooks and all that sort of thing, and as much advice as they want. CSC also works in the community. That's the second part of the C, in chess in schools and communities. And we've been building that up very nicely over the last couple of years until 2020, of course, with lots of sessions in libraries and other community spaces. So we were really spreading out big time until the events of 2020 rather caught us up and took everyone by surprise. And probably we're all in the same boat when we first heard of the outbreak of the pandemic. We didn't really take it all that much seriously. We thought it would easily pass. Or, here in Britain, we're very lazy with such things, and we just thought it wouldn't happen in Britain to the extent it's happening all around the world, because we're quite a naive nation in that respect. And of course, it caught everybody out with its severity, and it still is very much ongoing. And we have no idea whatsoever when things will return to any sort of normality, if at all. You can hear lots of talk about vaccines on the news and things like this, but we shall see how long it will take. My own personal estimation from the very start of it, when I realised how serious it was 2 years would be the normal sort of range for a pandemic, which would take us to, March 2022, which is quite a sobering thought. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but we will see. And this gave us a bit of a problem with Chess in Schools and Communities, because all of our schools wanted to close in March, and with it, most of our work went away also. And then eventually we crawled into the summer holidays, and we had to rethink everything we were doing at Chess in Schools and Communities to try and find some sort of way forward to continue delivering some way, somehow, to our schools. Otherwise, there was a real serious danger that the charity Chess in Schools and Communities would actually just cease to exist for some time at least, until things returned. And we assessed the situation, and we knew that it wasn't going to be possible to go back to all of our schools from September, the start of the school year in the United Kingdom. And this gave us a big problem. So we had to rethink how to form our methods of delivery, to give various options. And one option, of course, was to try and deliver things online. Now, our workforce is, in the majority, quite of an advanced age, and chess technology doesn't come easy to a lot of people. They're used to just going to the classroom, using the real boards and sets, which is fantastic. But the idea of delivering something online was a new concept to most of our workforce, myself included. I've been on probably the steepest learning curve in my life, and that probably mimics most of what CSC were up against. So we'll give some serious thought to this. Now, I'm not an expert in online delivery by any stretch of the imagination. I'm learning as I go along, like everybody else. But I am the chief trainer for Chess in Schools and Communities, and I crisscross the United Kingdom delivering training days to teachers and to anybody else who wants to learn how to teach chess, when we were able to do so in a physical manifestation of ourselves. So it's my job to try and train, or find a plan to train, our CSC tutors as much as we possibly could to get them ready for the potential for delivering online from September onwards, depending on what our schools wanted and what stage they were at. So the first step in that was to write a big report for Chess in Schools and Communities and sort of garnish that with some recommendations of the way forwards. So we did that in the summer. I presented it to Malcolm Payne, who's the head of CSC, and Chris Fegan, who's the number 2. And they liked the plan very much. And then we were able to formulate our path forward in the training aspect. And the training days, I did 7 of them. It took 4 weekends of solid work delivering training sessions. Not that there was much else to do in the world. You couldn't really go out anywhere, so you may as well be huddled across a screen teaching chess. I spoke to lots of people. I took lots of advice. In fact, I do notice on this call we've got Dr. Andrew Varney, who's much more experienced in teaching chess online than I am. And Dr. Varney also works as a tutor for CSC, and I took lots of advice from him. We had some very interesting Zoom meetings, and he was one of the people who was especially helpful to me putting things together. And I want to just show you really just the training program I put together and show you. I'm not going to dwell on every slide. Some slides won't be relevant at the moment, but I'll show you that, and we'll take questions at the end. And I'll also show you some resources that Chess in Schools and Communities managed to put together in anticipation of things changing. And I'll also talk a little bit at the end about how this has happened in schools now and what our schools are up to, how many have taken online delivery from us, and all that sort of thing. So if bear with me a second, I'll just share the screen. Something on there. I think it might be this one. Can you see that? Is it all shared okay? Thank you. So this is our logo again. This is just the opening slide. I'll just go through these reasonably quickly, and then we'll talk a little bit more at the end. Oh, that's interesting. It's not letting me. Sorry, it's a mouse click. CSE Online Classroom Training by me, and this is an overview of the course. We wanted to talk about the platforms, delivery methods, any technical obstacles, various software and online facilities, safeguarding and expectations, which is hugely important, obviously, when you're dealing with schools, ideas for multi-class lessons, a recommended training procedure, the digital training and evaluation team, concerns and observations, and then a general conclusion. And do keep in mind all the way through this that most of our tutors probably hadn't used Zoom more than once or twice in their lives, hadn't used Skype, didn't know anything about Microsoft Teams, which is another method of delivery, and didn't know how to teach chess through a screen or what to expect. So it was a big package of things I had to take into account to level it out and make it appealing to all of our tutors. Incidentally, we have probably 120 tutors working for Chess in Schools and Communities. And we offered this training initially to, I think it was 50 people. And then we built it up with an extra training day because the demand was there to make the magical chess number of 64, which is always very nice and easy to remember. So we had 64 tutors split into the 7 training days. And we had to start from the very, very beginning. We had to explain things in very basic terms and build up to the plan for delivery. So I thought I'd start by showing the different methods of communication and how things have evolved over the decades, if not the centuries. Starting very basically with the smoke signal, and then the carrier pigeon, and the message in a bottle. And it isn't so well known, but if you look there in the middle on the left-hand side, balloons were used for sending out mail as well, mail deliveries in huge balloons. And we have the telegram with a policeman there with his enormous earphone thing there, broadcasting to the nation. The telephone, of course, and just look at the difference between the telephone on the left and the telephone on the right. Certainly in our household when I was growing up, maybe 1 house in 3 had a telephone. It was very much a luxury item and a very expensive one as well. And now it seems, well, I heard on the news the other day that the average age for a child to have an iPhone is 7. You can imagine going back to when I was a child and 1 in 3 households had a telephone, and now every child seems to have an iPhone, this amazingly powerful computer, which for better or worse, it's very hard to reverse that trend now. So it just shows how methods of communication have changed over the years. And we came on across the cutting edge of technology and the different ages thereof. The cutting edge of a generation is it's what represents the finest cutting edge. So in the Stone Age, they would cut with stones. Then we moved on to the Bronze Age, and then the Iron Age. You can see the men there working hard to forge some material there to use. And now we're, of course, in a completely different age. We've evolved so much over the millennia. We're in the digital age. And according to the Collins Dictionary, the digital age is a time when large amounts of information are widely available to many people, largely through computer technology. Bit of a mouthful, that definition, really, but I think it almost sums up what we're talking about. And it shows there the various platforms and things. We've got the Twitter, we've got the Facebook, all sorts of things going on. And it's a bit of a scary world in many respects, especially, most of our workforce, they don't use Twitter or Facebook or anything like this. They just want to get on and do the job. So they're entering this strange new world, which perhaps they've tried to avoid for a long time. And now they're being drawn into that world. because they have to upgrade their skills to continue doing the job they love. It's very brave of our tutors, really, especially the ones who were self-confessed technophobes, to actually almost put themselves in the dentist chair and experience this training, knowing that it's going to be difficult for them, but knowing it's useful for them ultimately also. These are our cutting edge technologies: the Zoom, the Skype, the Microsoft Teams. When I researched the subjects by contacting all of our schools, it became clear that one platform wasn't going to be enough to cater for all schools. I rather naively assumed at the start of the project that all of our schools would be happy with whichever platform we suggested. And at the time, at the start of the pandemic, actually Skype was still the leader, it seemed to me, and Zoom was the new kid on the block. And now Zoom seems to have become the default one for most people. But there were some schools who didn't want either of those two for various internal safety reasons, perhaps, and that they wanted Microsoft Teams as their delivery. So we had to do a little bit of work on each one and get our tutors up and running just with the very basics of how to do something. And I think the very basics is a good point, because we're not expecting everyone in the UK who's delivering chess lessons to be an absolute expert in all of these things. And I made it clear to all the tutors that it is a learning experience and that things will go wrong, but the art is how to move on from that, how to find some way around the problems. Even the schools are not particularly experienced in the UK using these methods. So it's going to be a massive learning experience all around, but we were desperate to get something in place to continue to do our job of teaching chess to the children. Platforms, this is just a little bit about the platforms. You don't have to read all of that, it's not particularly relevant, but it just shows the potential strengths and weaknesses of each platform. For example, Skype allows calls of an unlimited time, but there are sometimes problems sharing your screen. For example, the school's internal settings might not allow you to share your screen unless you jump through quite a few hoops to do so. Zoom, as you can see there, is becoming extremely popular, so you can tell this was written a little while ago. And there was the problem of calls ending after 40 minutes if it was more than two people on the call. So that was a potential problem as well. We thought CSC might buy some extra accounts if it were going down that route. Microsoft Teams worked well, but on the test calls I did, there was an unfortunate flicker on the screen. But that seems to have cleared now. That was a known issue. It was discussed on online forums, and that seems to have cleared. Some schools mentioned Google Classroom, which we didn't need to investigate too deeply, because all of the schools we've been catering for have had one of the above three methods rather than the Google Classroom. And there's probably more methods as well that I've not even mentioned here, because we've got what we need. And as I said earlier, that's all we need to do at the moment. We can always expand our knowledge in time to come. Delivery. The practical aspect of the delivery to our sessions is of paramount importance, because we're used to an incredibly varied set of conditions in the classroom. Quite often we're left alone with the children. We shouldn't be. It's in our SLA, our service level agreement, that we have someone helping us all the time. But everyone who's worked in a school will understand that the teacher occasionally nips out to do some photocopying and never ever comes back. So you're left alone for some considerable time with the children, perhaps. If we're teaching online, under no circumstances can we be allowed to be left alone with the children, because we can't control the class through the screen. If someone just decides to get up and walk out, we can't do anything about it. So we had to tighten up lots of things that had perhaps slipped over the years. And a lot of that tightening up involved having a really, really strong teacher or teaching assistant. And that's going to make or break the delivery, because if there's no strong teacher in the classroom, someone who's prepared to help you with your delivery, it's just not going to work. You know, if they're marking books in the corner and not paying any interest, it's harder for you to take control of that class because you're through a screen rather than there physically. And this is just a list of things of what we needed. You can see that the teacher needs to be conversant with the IT that we're using. We need to have sight of the classroom, so we need the cameras on, which has its own safeguarding issues in some schools. And very, very importantly, we wanted a secondary method of communication with the member of staff in question, their personal phone number or just their email. So if things do go wrong, because things always will go wrong with IT, we can very quickly re-establish contact, find out where the problem is, and hopefully solve it. So that was one of the big things that came out of it all, was to have this secondary method of communication. Again, you don't need to read all of that. I'll just do a quick summary, and we can talk about anything else at the end. The aim was to replicate as much as possible what we would normally do in the classroom. And if our session was an hour long, which is our default timing, then we want to do 20 minutes input, 20 minutes with our workbooks from CSC or worksheets, and then 20 minutes of games. And one thing I did find when I started doing some test sessions online was my sense of timing started to slip a little bit. And if you're in the classroom physically, you can detect when things are changing in the class. You know when to change it around. You know when the children are getting a little bit tired of your input. They'll let you know that in no uncertain terms. But through a screen, it's a little bit different. So I became aware that I need to tighten up your timekeeping. You must keep to the session times, because you might have a session straight afterwards and you don't want to keep people waiting. And this is another important factor, that tutors need to be a little bit more aware of the timing. Maybe have a big clock in front of them when they're teaching online, just so they can see the physical movement of the time. And secondly, we can't control a class through a screen. If you raise your voice through a screen, it has no impact whatsoever on children. If you were there physically and you raised your voice a little bit, it's one of the key weapons of a teacher to be able to just change the tone of your voice, the severity of your voice. None of that works through a screen. And the reason for that is children are on screens all of the time, and they're on noisy things all of the time. If you turn the TV on, there's people shouting all the time. It has no impact at all if we're trying to get the attention of people by shouting through a screen, because that's the normal state of a screen at the moment, is people shouting. Overcoming technical obstacles, because schools vary greatly with the quality of their own IT equipment. And if one method of delivery will not allow us to share our screens, we need to switch to another one. Which means that if we tried to use Skype in a school and their settings wouldn't allow to share the screen, then we're going to have to switch to Zoom or Teams or something like that. So that's why we needed to understand the very basics of each facility. Sometimes the class can hear the tutor coming through the speakers, or they should be able to rather. But sometimes, because the classroom is actually quite a noisy place, and I'm not just talking about the children's voices, but the people are opening doors, people are scraping chairs, other members of staff are coming in all the time. I found that through a speaker on a computer or through your headphones, it's a very sort of flat sound, and the sound lacks texture. So it's difficult to sort out the noises, which in a normal physical capacity, you would actually, your brain would be filtering out the chair scraping, the other staff talking, but it comes through as one big ball of noise online, and that's something else we had to get used to, sort of listening skills. And normally you'd counter that by having children come to the front to talk into the microphone directly. But given that some schools manage their sort of COVID security different to others, some children can't move around the classroom like they used to. They have to stay in one seat all of the time until they go out in a particular fashion for playtimes and things like that. So it wasn't simply a question of getting someone to come closer to the microphone. So these were all considerations I was just getting the tutor to think about. And there's various problems. You know, if you can't hear the children properly, you need to get the teacher or teaching assistant, that's what TA stands for in that context, to stay close to the laptop, and they've got to relay the answers verbally from the children. So again, the teacher has to be so strong, they have to be in control of that class. And it could be that they have to repeat everything the children say if you're having trouble hearing through what could be poor speakers from their point of view, or just general background noise as well. So the teacher's definitely got to be on the spot quite a lot here. IT can fail and the connection will be lost. We spend a lot of time with the tutors presenting these problems and then asking for their ideas to solve the problems, to see how resourceful we could be. And I'm not going to make you do that. The first thing to do is try and reconnect, of course. And then it all comes back to our secondary method of communication with a member of staff. We can phone them, we can email them to find out what's going on. The teacher will have their workbooks and worksheets ready. So if there's a delay in getting back up and running, they can always get on with some work while we're trying to sort out the IT facility. So there's no danger of the children not having something to do if we follow this procedure. So it's trying to think ahead, trying to work out creative problems to any kind of problems that we encounter with the IT. If the school cannot set up the system for you to be able to see the class, we're on this meeting now, we can all see each other. Okay, it's small rectangles, but we can see what's going on, which makes a huge difference. It's highly desirable to see the class, but it may not be possible for safeguarding reasons. Some schools are very, very strict on what you can see inside their school. And we can't do anything about that. We've just got to turn to head office to see what we can do in that particular case, whether we should continue or not, because I think it's hugely important to be able to see the class, even as a small rectangle. As long as you can see the class, you know that they're on task because they'll be looking your way. They won't be looking the other way and this sort of thing. So it's hugely important to see them. This is no longer relevant because this was when Zoom started. There was all sorts of issues with hackers and people breaking into meetings. It's been really tightened up now, certainly with passwords and things like that. But if anything untoward were to happen, we stop the meeting. We just stop it and then reconnect with the teacher using the secondary methods. This was an interesting one. Windows starts updating at the most inappropriate moments. So you've got your laptop out or your computer, you're just about to start your meeting, and then all of a sudden Windows starts to wind you up by updating, and it takes hours and hours and hours sometimes. And this is quite a problem. Turn your device on sometime in advance before the lesson time, so Windows can have its fun. You can download as much as it wants or update your settings. And if you turn it on early enough, it should be okay to be there and ready for your lesson. You can sometimes alter the timings of your updates in the device settings. And if you've got two computers or one computer and one laptop, have them both on just in case you need to switch to the other one very quickly. It might even work on your phone temporarily if you've got a good phone like that. This is just a range of softwares. We talked about Chess Kid, we talked about Live Chess, we talked about using ChessBase. Basically just to highlight to the tutors the tools that are available. And what surprised me, excuse me, I'll just take a drink. What really surprised me was a lot of our tutors never ever used ChessBase. And ChessBase is one of the simplest things to be able to set up positions, especially if you're doing mini games. You can set up illegal positions on ChessBase to create diagrams or screenshots and things like this. They don't need the kings on the board. And a lot of our tutors had no idea how to use that. So we had to implement, after this, we had some special sessions one-to-one to show people how to use the basics of ChessBase, to set up a position, to draw the arrows and things like this. But it did surprise me a little bit because I thought ChessBase would have been the default program that everybody was using. But it seems everyone's just playing online now, on live chess, etc., and not actually studying their own games in the old-fashioned way. Safeguarding and expectations is hugely important, as I mentioned earlier. We're talking about working with children. We cannot ever relax our efforts or our responsibilities. It doesn't matter which method of delivery we're using. And this involves investigating the school's safeguarding procedures, which may have changed after the COVID outbreak. They may be different for online delivery as compared to the normal delivery. We've just got to read everything and make absolutely sure we've fallen into line with all of the school's safeguarding expectations. It's just far too important to cut corners on that one. That's a huge, huge thing. The expectations of our own tutors need stressing, and because people are working online, there's a temptation. You think people can't see you as much, so you don't have to take such care on your appearance and your timekeeping, for example. So we highlighted the personal appearance, using an appropriate background. I mean, most people now have some sort of virtual background, don't they? But who knows what's in people's houses? You don't want necessarily everything on screen. Punctuality. We made the point that if you're teaching children, well, if you're doing anything at all, actually, and you were doing it in real life, the physical manifestation of yourself, you'd be there on time. You'd be there maybe 10 minutes or something before the session started. And it's exactly the same when you're online. You can't just cut corners with that either. Extreme caution when sharing screens, extreme patience, calmness under pressure, and professionalism at all times. And we did not want anyone recording lessons in a school because that's a whole difficult area with safeguarding yet again. So recording was definitely off the agenda. Ideas for multi-class lessons, because we thought some schools, in fact, some schools did want us to be on the screen in two classrooms at once. And this gives us a little bit of a problem. So we had various ideas how to teach multiple classes. Oh yes, and judicious use of the mute button is recommended when you're talking about two classes. It's a very powerful thing, the mute button. We like that. Malcolm Payne himself came up with the idea of a timed broadcast, and in fact, this might still be in the pipeline where we pre-record lessons. It's the biggest saving on time, costs, and human resources. We could just pick a time to broadcast the lessons, and there you go. Just beam it to anybody who's interested. Any school could sign up for that lesson at the same time. The obvious strength being it could be delivered to an unlimited number of classes simultaneously, and biggest weakness is the interaction and the shortened time of the session, because if you're going over half an hour with something like that, people will start to drift off with their concentration levels. It's not easy for anyone to stare at a screen for a long period of time and stay sort of tuned into everything. We had a variety of multi-class activities. Again, you don't need to read all of this. This is just some tutor notes, but we experimented by playing one class against another, with the teacher in charge of each class relaying the moves to me, and I could play them on my shared screen, which had the chess-based board on. So there's all sorts of things we could do with that. And that was just throwing out some ideas for the tutors to latch onto, because we weren't entirely sure what circumstances they'd be finding themselves in, whether it would be multi-class, single class, or anything in between. My recommended training procedure for the CSE tutors was this: the training day itself, which is what you're getting a very, very shortened version of here. And then we established a digital training and evaluation team. And the idea was the tutors had to have a session with a member of the team for their own benefit, to show that they could do things as simple as sharing a screen. For a vast percentage of our tutors, that was a brand new thing for them to do, to share the screen. And we just wanted to know that they could do it. It wasn't an official interview or a test or an exam. We just wanted to be a friendly person there with them. So if anything basic went wrong, we could fix that before we unleashed them upon the virtual classroom. This was the team, in fact. I might as well show you this, because I think Dr. Varney is still on the call, and there he is, a very important team member. And some of those are the names you may know also. Some of them might be on the call. Certainly Paul and Jonathan were in the meetings earlier, as was Matt Piper. And some shadowing as well. We didn't want them to go into school sessions just with the training and the evaluation and very little experience. So the idea is that one of the team, the digital team I've just shown you, will actually sit in with, certainly for the first week's lessons. I wanted a default of 5 hours, but that it's probably a bit over the top. That's a couple of hours, maybe it'll be fine. You'll soon know then if someone's coping well, and if they're not coping all that well, we can help them in the session because we're there with them. And then we can have some more meetings afterwards and sort out the basic problems. I thought it'd be a very good idea to have some training days for teachers if we were going to be going online long term, which I think we probably are. And this would mimic, in a way, the normal training days I do all across the United Kingdom, teaching people how to teach chess in schools, but with the added slant this time that we're talking about the online world. And I think it's very important to keep the teachers in the loop and to let them know how things are. And it strengthens our roots in each school if we're doing something for teachers as well. That's still very much in the pipeline. We're hoping to do that very soon. Ongoing support. It's going to be very strange for tutors teaching online for the first few times. And I wanted it to be made absolutely clear to them that whatever happens, the digital evaluation and training team will always be there for them. And that we're not just sort of booting them out the door and saying, right, there you go, get on with it. Because there will be questions, concerns. Everyone will have a crisis of confidence at various times. We all do. It's quite natural. And any other problems that arise as well. We've continued to do that. We've been discussing things ever since. We're in very regular contact with our tutors and the rest of the team. And we discuss things as a team, and then we take things forward from there. We don't need, that's just a few things internal. And finally, to the conclusion. And you can read those yourself. This is just a few basic notes to conclude the report. Essentially, to have very strong support from teachers and TAs, have our own conditions met by the school in terms of sharing screens and that sort of thing. we train our tutors properly, we set the expectations for our tutors, we continue to support them. We have to accept it's a work in progress, which it is, because we're all learning all of the time. There's new problems thrown up all the time, and it's those problems that we must adapt to and meet our problems creatively and change to the drifting circumstances we find ourselves in. So I'll just stop sharing that. And I get back to my Zoom. So I hope you found some of that useful, not too tedious to sit through. And Mr. Varney, Acorn Chess is even easier. Mr. Varney is one of the big brains between something called Acorn Chess, which is fabulous for mini games, and we're keen to promote that. I think it's a sensationally good package. So if you want to connect with Dr. Varney there about his Acorn Chess, which has been proving popular this weekend in the sessions, I think that's a fantastic tool going forward. And it was only when we're halfway through the training that we got to know about Acorn Chess, and that's a real boost for us. So thank you for that, Andrew. I'll just show you one more thing, if I can find it. I'm not sure I can find that actually. Or is it that? Sorry, yes I can. Just find what I'm looking for. Can you all see that screen, the CSC screen? And we put together various things for COVID secure chess. Someone had a brainwave that COVID secure chess is actually CSC, which suits us really well because that's our logo. And I'll just talk you through this. That's a bit of information about it. That's the blog I was writing each week for the thing, but this is the most interesting page. I'll just very quickly show you this, and then I'll take any questions you have to offer. Chess at home. None of this was here at the start of the summer. And now we've got, you can see there, the lesson 1, the pawn. We're taking it from 3 different angles. We've got a worksheet, which I'll just quickly show you. Worksheet on the pawn. And, oops, where am I going now? Let me do the back arrow. And we have YouTubes, and we also utilize our Kahoot quizzes. So we've got 3 approaches there to our lessons, and they've proved really popular. And one of the great things about the Kahoot quizzes in particular is that we can share our screen and use those in our classrooms, and the children love the Kahoot quizzes. So it's worth checking out our homepage there to find the Chess at Home section. I think most of you should find some of those resources quite useful in some way, shape or form. Share screen has vanished. I know I've just turned the share screen off, but you don't need to see. You can just find that later. That's absolutely fine, but thank you for pointing that out. And well, that takes me almost to the end of that little bit. So I'm open to any questions now. Any questions, anything I didn't explain properly, anything you want to know about how we've progressed in the UK since then? Oh, thank you, Dr. Varney. Yes, indeed. The Kahoot quizzes are one of our most powerful tools for delivery at the moment. They really sort of shake up the classroom, and the children are so enthusiastic for them because they understand the principle of the Kahoot quizzes because they do it in other subjects. And to have that combined with chess is a real good thing for them because they feel they're not actually working, but of course they are. If you've got any questions, you can either put them in the chat or you can actually unmute yourselves and deliver them live and in person. That'd be quite nice. I can tell you what we've been doing since then. Obviously, we reconnected with all our schools at the end of the summer in anticipation of starting again in September. And it was a mixed bag. Some schools wanted us back physically, which is fantastic. And within those schools, things were very, very different all across the board. Some schools had very strict measures in that we had to wear a mask all the way through the school. In some schools, it was impossible to tell anything had changed. Everything was absolutely as it was before, which was perhaps a little bit risky, but to each their own. And some schools didn't want chess at all until the new year, because they wanted to assess things and see how things were going before they decided which method of delivery to utilize. And of course, they're very conscious that the children have missed about 6 months education, so they were trying to catch up with that also. But they're still in the loop. We're still in touch with them all, and hopefully we'll bring some back on board from January onwards. But we did have a fair percentage of schools that did want the online delivery, and they've had lessons every week since September. And I have to tell you, it's going really well. We've got the occasional problem with sound in schools because teachers keep having to run to get the IT man to get their speakers working and things like that. But generally speaking, we're solving problems creatively, and we're keeping in touch with the teachers with that all-important secondary method of communication I told you about. So if something does fall off or something's not quite right, we can just phone the teacher and talk about it from both ends until we find a solution. But the schools are being very patient. Our tutors are being very patient in this strange new world. And the children have been absolutely magnificent. They love doing chess, and it's really good to get something that they enjoy doing into the schools, because a lot of schools' activities will not be going ahead as normal for very, very obvious reasons, but we can keep our delivery going. Here we've got a question in the chat. Do any of the EU courses cover the same things you covered in the COVID period training? We're in Canada and we have no standards for training chess instructors. Now that's very interesting. And we did this off our own bat. We weren't part of any other organization. We just felt the need to instruct our tutors to give them the best possible chance of continuing to teach in schools, whichever way the school wanted things to be. But George, if you want to contact me later, I'm very easy to find. I'm on Twitter as CSE Teesside and all that sort of thing. Or you could ask John Foley through the program. We should maybe get together and try and discuss that and see if we could actually help you with that from CSC. It'd be nice to do something international there. But as far as I know, there's no international body doing that sort of training for teachers. But we've been doing it ever since CSC started. And of course, now we've got this new digital training program. But if you wanted to reach out to me later on, I'd love to link up, and we'll see if CSC, lost too many C's in that sentence, see if CSC can help you. And if we could do so, I think that would be a really thrilling thing to do. So please do reach out to me for that. Am I able to share how many CS schools have taken online lessons? I can only tell you from my own area, the CSC Teesside's in the northeast of England, for those who don't know the area. And we started the year with 15 schools, which was a good number of schools for our small area. We're the second smallest area in the country. And since then, we have 4 schools that do the online delivery. 2 or 3 schools don't want chess until the new year, which may well be online, depending on how things go. And we're actually expanding at the moment into the online ones, because schools now, they've stabilized from September, and they're starting to welcome things back into schools. And part of that welcoming has indeed been online delivery. For example, I'm shadowing one of our tutors in a new school session on Wednesday, Earl Spencer School, I believe it's called. And that they want online delivery now, and that's a new one for us in terms of online. So it is starting to pick up a little bit more now. Schools have got their feet under the table, if you like, and are wanting to bring things back into action. I don't know, Andrew, the exact number up and down the country, but I do believe it is growing, and certainly on Teesside it's worked really well, and schools really look forward to the sessions. But we have established very strong teachers in those classrooms, which was part of our overriding conditions. And it's important. We've made a really good start with that, and I never want those standards to slip back. I never want it to be where teachers feel they can just go and do photocopying for an hour when they should be helping our tutors. I don't think it's fair on our tutors, and I'm desperately trying to keep all those things at a very high standard, because I want our tutors to have the best experience, just like anybody else. Jerry, Chess in Schools US is doing training in the US. It would be great to partner with Canada and CSC as well. Have I used the Padlet tool? I haven't used the Padlet tool. You'd have to explain that to me. If you drop me a line, we can start talking about that. But already in just one meeting in half an hour, we've got this potential now for this international collaboration between America, Canada, and the UK, which is fabulous. So the more of that, the better. Oh yes, please do, Omar. Yes, please do come in and ask a question. Just unmute yourself and fire away. Thank you.
Thanks for all the hosting you've been doing throughout the weekend. It's been brutal, 4 a.m. to now. But question for you, without sounding insensitive, I've had to train a lot of our instructors in our organization, and whether it's age related or whatever the case may be, sometimes it's pretty hard to, tell them, control C, stuff we take for granted, copy paste and shuttling through windows. Is there a velvet glove technique you have where, you guide them to like check out these YouTube videos, or here's a list of shortcuts? How do you, without being disrespectful, because a lot of them are older than me. And
Yes.
so how do you guide them so that they don't feel like they're put on a boat and just pushed away in the water?
It's an excellent point, and it has to be addressed because it's the same in most things. If somebody knows something, there's an automatic assumption that somebody else knows the same. We're talking about very basic level things. And the only reason I was able to do it on my training days was that I was experiencing everything for the first time myself. I'd just gone through it very recently, doing lots of test sessions with schools, and things went wrong, and I had to find creative solutions. And that's the only way to do it, really. So there's no sort of silver bullet for any of this. It's a question of whoever's doing the training has to be incredibly patient. And I always say to my tutors, I don't care if I have to explain something 100 times to you or more. As long as you're sort of paying attention and trying, I will just go on as many calls as you want. And we had lots of one-to-ones afterwards, after the training, the group training sessions, because we made that available to the tutors, that if anybody wants a one-to-one, because sometimes people are a little bit shy, a little bit embarrassed about speaking up, that they don't understand something. But I found one-to-one, certainly the people who had never used these things before, really opened up. And with some people, it took 3, 4, 5 hours of different sessions to get them just plugging in the microphone, plugging in their headphones, testing the sound. And it's just a matter of real patience and trying to help people. And as long as someone's trying, as I said, I'll explain it a million times. It doesn't bother me. But that's actually quite difficult for a lot of people to do. I'm not
Yeah,
building up.
I
I'm not building
agree.
my own, not building up my own skill level, but I've trained myself to do that over the years. And working with children, I mean, I've been working in schools for, this is my 33rd year.
Wow.
And when I started off, I wasn't that patient. All I wanted was people to be good chess players, so my teams would be strong. And then I realized after a few short years that I was doing it the wrong way. I wanted everyone to enjoy what they were doing. And who cares if they're strong players, children in chess, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to give them something different to do, improve their thinking skills and all that sort of thing. And once you come at things from a different angle, that will increase the patience of someone who's trying to train or teach or deliver. And I think it is just a question of taking time and singling out the people who need extra help, identifying them, and in no way, shape, or form ever embarrassing them, but offering one-to-ones for as long as they want until they feel comfortable. And that was one of the major success stories of our courses, I think, because what really pleased me was seeing the people who were the technophobes, but were still brave enough to go ahead and do the training. And some people did and some people didn't. And the ones I really take my hat off to were the ones who were really afraid of the computers, who didn't know the very basics about loading up a Zoom even, or, as I say, plugging the headphones in, something as simple as that. And now some of those now are the ones that I would give the schools to if the schools come knocking, because they're the ones who've sort of gone through the pain barrier. They've experienced the learning thing themselves, the immense curve of that. And I think it's fantastic. And they're the people I really take my hat off to. So I think that's it, Omar. You need more sessions of one-to-one nature with people and make it clear to them that the help will always be there, and that to spend as long as they want and never to get frustrated with teaching the very basics, X amount of times until it sinks in. And I always compare it to, if I'm trying to learn something new, what I would not want, if I'm trying to learn a musical instrument or something, and I take lessons, the last thing I would want is someone who's tutting because I can't master the basic chord of something after 55,000 attempts. And I'd want someone to encourage me. And if I learn that way, it seems reasonable to assume that most people are probably going to learn that way if they're trying something new. And it puts a lot of onus on the trainer or the teacher or the tutor to be that patient. And I think patience is a big quality with training and teaching, and perhaps something that is not as readily found as it used to be, I think, because people expect everyone to be up to speed with these things, with the basics, and people aren't, and people need that extra time, I think, is the point. Does that make sense, Omar?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I mean, I absolutely agree with the patience part, but there's still something that, like even breakout room, I struggled for an hour to find out how to do breakout room, and finally I Googled it, and it's like, you need to go to your Zoom profile and do it from there. And And so I tell people, there's times when I struggle, even in a class, I'm struggling. Kids like, Mr. Shaw, why are you sweating? And I'm like, it happens. Like you just got to roll with the punches.
I
But
think
anyways,
that's
thank you.
I think that's the perfect attitude. And again, there's a temptation if you're in charge of something, you want to show that you know everything, and it's a sign of weakness if you don't. But in fact, the opposite is true, and it bonds people and it makes people relax if they know that you're learning as well, and you make that quite clear to them. It's sort of leveling that playing field and not ever being sort of condescending or superior, and making it clear that everyone, absolutely everyone, had to start something sometime in their lives. Nobody was born as a computer expert or a chess expert or anything, and everyone had to go through that barrier to do that. And sometimes when people are on the other side of that journey, they do lose sight of how basic things have to be. It's a little bit like teaching the children chess, and we start off with how pawns move before we put anything else on the board. We have lots of games with those, and only when they're comfortable with that particular piece do we then move on to another piece. And it's really similar with that aspect. But by the way, thank you, Omar, for attending all these sessions as well, because if you've seen me presenting more than a couple, you must have been in quite a lot. So thank you very much for that. Let's see if there's any more questions. My email, that's a good question. I'll put my email in the chat. And I'm very contactable, and I do actually pride myself on replying to people. People trade emails and this sort of thing, and you never hear from them. But I always will reply. Always, and usually quite quickly. Chesslink@hotmail.com. There it is. Please feel free to copy that and just get in touch anytime you like. Patience has been key. On the few, I help the best teachers through experiences. Yeah, that's an important point again for Mr. Varney, whose time and experience I always value greatly. The best teachers, though inexperienced with tech, were very keen to learn, and that's the thing, isn't it? If you're patient and you're taking time to help people, if they're keen to learn as well, that's a winning combination. It doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as you're both on that journey together and helping each other. Any more questions for me? We're about to be booted out, I think, again. I'm surprised that we've used up the hour almost already, and I've loved seeing you all today. I've loved seeing you all across the weekend as well. When we set up this conference, of course, most of you know that we have the conference normally in London every year, and it's a great disappointment that we can't be there together physically to now go and get a cup of tea or something together and continue the discussion. But it seems to have worked really well this weekend, and I've enjoyed all the sessions I've been in. I think it's been absolutely fascinating. I've learned so much. And one of the things I keep stressing to people is that we could have run up the white flag. We could have given up. We could have said to everyone, we're not doing a conference, we're not doing chess in schools, we're not giving lessons until things become clearer in the world. And that's one route we could have gone down, and no doubt many people in the world have gone down that route, and they're waiting to see what's going to happen. But we don't know how long this is going to last. We have no idea whatsoever. The only important thing is that we're still creating, every person, not only in this call, but the whole conference. Everyone's creating, everyone's trying to find some way forwards, everyone's enjoying meeting new people, picking up new ideas, and this is all snowballing, and it's so important that everyone's here today, and it's just so lovely to see you all and share ideas and spend some time in your company. And I do wish we could all be together properly and we could continue the discussion for as long as we wanted to. But hopefully next year in London, we shall see next December, I might see you all physically in London, and we can then spend as long as we want talking about everything. Just see if yeah, absolutely, John, we're just winding down now. Thank you, Omar. I've loved your positive comments, Omar. And believe me, every positive comment makes a huge difference when you're sort of on this side of the screen. So thank you very much for your support. It's great meeting you. But we are about to be booted out, but my email's there. And if you lose it off there, just contact John Foley and he'll put you in touch. And I'm very easy to find anywhere on the internet. And I'd just love to communicate with you all further. So thank you very much for listening to all of that, everybody. Greatly appreciated, and we will see you again in the near future.